the Dragons were talking about. And if it wasn't just the fact, I feel like their recruitment has been quite poor. It's also the fact that some of the injuries now, they've lost a couple of key young players, whether it's injury or it's suspensions, the no fault stand down by the NRL. Luke, where are you at with the Dragons? I feel like this could be another team where you're about to say the slippery slide's right there, jump on it.
Yeah, well, it is, but it's funny because the Dragons, like in defense of the Dragons, you look at their roster and they reflect a team that will slide down, but their roster reflected them finishing lower than what they actually did as well too. So they've kind of outperformed, but still disappointed in the same way because there's been stuff happening. We had the barbecue gate 2 seasons ago, and you've obviously had an incident in the off season with Amon.
Cody
So
Ramsey's
even
now
though
out.
what was that? Sorry.
Cody Ramsey's now out as well with that unfortunate illness. So
Yeah, and it was one of those funny things, like they're disappointed, and that actually reminded me there. I think why it's like, okay, yes, they've finished higher than they perceived. Like if you had to go roster, they've outperformed it. But like you just mentioned, just remind me of Tyrell Sloan. He was meant to be the gun, didn't perform, and Cody Ramsey, he performed quite like he outdid my expectations. Let's just put it that way at fullback.
yeah,
Not saying he couldn't be a quality first grader, but I wouldn't have pictured fullback, and especially wouldn't have picked him ousting Tyrell Sloan. So that's the thing. I think a lot of the things we saw shining lights just didn't work out. And obviously Sims has gone to the Storm, and he was always rumored to go. So look, it's one of those things where I just don't see them making the eight, and then I see them being bottom end. But I could see us just doing this exact same potty again, where we say the same, and they still finish in that 10th, 11th
yeah,
range. But it's one of those. But the thing is, I think the most important thing to bring up is there going to be a coaching change?
yeah,
Is
yeah.
do we just like, yeah, we've had it with this? Yes, we've kind of not dropped to the bottom, but mediocrity isn't good enough. So yeah, and I'll let you follow up on that. I'm
Yeah.
guessing you're kind of feeling the same.
Yeah, I am. I feel like the Dragons this year are a very interesting side in terms of I feel like this is the year where their undoings of the last couple of years, whether it's coaching decisions, recruitment decisions, sort of comes back and bites them this year. And I sort of, to paint a picture to a lot of people out there, it's like Sloan, for instance. He was this time last year, everyone was raving about him. And I think most people had him in their super coach team because he was cheap and he was
Mm.
also apparently with the young gun and he was going to have the year out of all years and really establish himself. And Griffin seemed to have favoured the more senior players. It's fair, I'll be nice and put it that way. More so on towards the back end of this year, or in their career. We then seen Ramsey move to fullback as well later in the season, and that did work. So credit for that. But you've got like players like Sloan now. He now has to come into it, and he's the vital piece of for mine the Dragons this year because Hunt can't do it himself. We all know what Hunt's going to produce. He'll produce 8 out of 10 games every week, but he needs players around him to do the same. And I don't think the Dragons have had that for a while. They've always had players who are too much on a roller coaster. Um, and Sloan, for me, I don't blame Sloan if he doesn't start the season off red hot because he's just had his confidence absolutely destroyed in the last 6 to 12 months. And it's all down to the fault for mine of Griffin. And I don't think he's handled that situation perfectly. And you said it earlier about Manly and certain players going to teams like the Storm, Panthers. You'd probably throw maybe like the Cowboys and maybe Para into that at the moment with their successes. And their coaches are much better at producing players. Like Para fans, for instance, were complaining that we lost Papali'i last year, but they got to remember when he first came to us, he was a no-name. That he was basically on the edge of his career. Warriors weren't even playing him half the time, and he came to become the best second rower in the comp. So can Griffin do that? I don't think he can. And I feel like he's shot a lot of these younger players' confidence. They need a fresh start. For mine, I was shocked that they didn't get rid of Griffin this at the end of last year to get that fresh start. They're as I said at the start with this preview for the Dragons, I think all their shortcomings will make them become undone for now this season. And it's unfortunate for the fans because Dragons fans, before you get too upset with us, I love the Dragons fans. They're one of the most passionate fan bases in the game that we've got, but they don't personally deserve this. And I know that a lot of Dragons fans and a lot of them aren't happy with the situation for both the team on the field and away from the field. And you know what? Some of them actually said to me, they hope they do come last this year because it forces the club to make the changes. If they have another year, like you said, that could happen, they finish 9th or 10th or 11th, they might go, yep, that's good enough. Give Griffin another extension. And I know most Dragons fans at the moment don't want that. So it's a massive, massive 5 to 6 weeks to start this comp for the Dragons, I feel.
Yeah, I think just bringing up that wooden spoon point, it's like there's two good reasons to like there's two decent scenarios. Obviously, wooden spoon's always going to suck, but there's two scenarios where you go, okay, either that's developing young talent or you're forcing change.
Yeah.
And that's probably, they might be able to fit both boats if they do that. But like you said, he has favored the older players in the past. So yeah, and obviously you got a guy there, Ben Hunt, who is really proven me wrong as a halfback. I've always thought he's a quality halfback, but as his career progressed, it looked least likely. It looked like, put him at hooker. He was fantastic last year. You just can't hide it. So I feel bad for him, and he really stood up for the club with that ceremony issue, with the end of year awards. That was an interesting debacle. I think only like a handful of people,
three or four players ended up turning up. Like that's
yeah. So but I'm glad he was obviously the one that didn't, or he wasn't there, but or basically voiced his concerns. So but at the end of the day, they could still be, not. They even need to, like you said, finish wooden spoon or make the 8. And I feel like they're going to fit in between, just because it's what the Dragons do.
Yeah. And they'll start red hot and fall down like most years. But for mine, as I said, the first 6 to 8 weeks for this team is crucial. And we'll see how it goes.